No one person has the same reason for getting the fear of flying, and it doesn't show itself in the same way.
Cleared for takeoff, transcon 46.
If you experience a pounding heart, maybe sweaty palms, difficult to breathe when you go to the airport, you might be a fearful flyer. Hi, everyone. I'm AK Bueller with Inside the Cockpit, Chief Transportation Correspondent here at Queen City News, also a pilot of over 40 years and counting, flight instructor. I love to fly. I'm not afraid to fly, but there are a lot of people that are. And if you're in that category, I think you're going to enjoy today's show. So, yeah, if you are a white knuckled flyer, yeah, if the thought of boarding an airplane just really makes you sick to your stomach, maybe you are a member of the Mile High Nail Biters Club, then have no fear. Paul Tizard is here. Paul is our very special guest today, coming to us from the UK. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Well, you have such an impressive resume. You are the United Kingdom's lead in the field of flying phobia. You have helped over 30,000 reluctant flyers over the years, and you have co-founded Love Fly Limited. And I think this has its roots with Sir Richard Branson and Virgin
Correct.
Atlantic. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
So personally, I've been helping nervous flyers since 1997 when I started Virgin's in-house program, which at the time was called Flying Without Fear, which followed from a conversation with Sir Richard himself because he used to be around all the time, and I was one of the cabin crew trainers. And it's started very small, and since then it's just grown and grown and grown, including courses with flights, and so that's how we've been able to get to the figure of over 30,000 people that have been helped. And probably the last 6 years, we took a slightly different route and we set up Love Fly, which again is in partnership with Virgin Atlantic. We just do things slightly differently, with much more of a community that is a huge global reach, which is very different. The other one was much more UK centric. So it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to help so many people.
Oh, absolutely. Who is your typical client or typical customer, the typical person who comes to you for help? Do they have something
Mm,
in common other than
yeah.
being afraid? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you know, fear of flying affects around 20% of the population. So you can literally have anybody from any age group, all genders, doesn't really matter. So the things that they have in common tend to be some common fears. So, for example, not feeling that they're in control of what's going on, which of course you're not. Turbulence, the noises, the movement, and there's some of the lesser ones which probably surprise people. Things like terrorism, etc., are not as big on the top of the list. Mostly, it's about the turbulence, the weather, not being in control. So, but aside from that, it affects all ages, and people can get it. Well, as you know, nobody's born with the fear of flying, but you can develop it at any stage. And sometimes people get it when they start to have children, or they can get it
Mm.
later in life. It seems to come from nowhere for many people.
Paul, did you ever have a fear of flying?
No.
No. So,
Now, people often ask that. I was used to be cabin crew, and when I was working as cabin crew, I noticed that at the time in the UK, there was only one airline sponsored course. And so when I spoke to Sir Richard about it, I said, look, Virgin's known for customer care, and there's a lot of people who are scared of flying. And so it was, as I was already a professional trainer, it was kind of a natural segue into running courses to help nurse flyers. And I've always had a team of great people around me. So I'm not the expert. There's lots of great people that work with me.
Paul, you say you were part of cabin crew. So, fill us in on that. Were you a flight attendant? Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that. What was that experience like for you? And did you notice passengers who were having a hard time with it? And how did you talk to them? And then we'll get into your program.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I was cabin crew from 1993 to 1998, and I moved quite swiftly from out on the front line to doing a sort of a part-time training, part-time out flying. And it was a combination of those two. So I have a psychology background and very interested in people and helping people. And when I used to fly as cabin crew, yes, you would get somebody on every flight who was nervous. And so
Every
all
flight.
cabin crew, every flight, yeah. Cabin crew are trained to help. Every member of cabin crew has experienced nervous flyers. They know how to help them. We get taught how to help panic attacks and how to help somebody who's hyperventilating. And for a lot of times, it's just that little bit of TLC, a bit of reassurance. And that's what cabin crew are there for. They're the face of the airline. Obviously, as pilots, as you know, your voice carries a lot of help and weight. So the way that you say things, being very careful with your language can be super helpful because nervous flyers, remember, it's 20% of the flying public, are listening to every single word you say or don't say. And if you say it in a certain way, so for example, you might say, we're going to hit turbulence. In their mind, it's a wall. So things like careless language can be unhelpful to a nervous flyer. So saying air pockets and things like that, which are media terms, but they grab a hold and they fuel the nervous flyer's imagination. So it's really important as cabin crew and as pilots and as ground staff that we just think about what we're saying to people and just more than anything, just reassurance goes a long, long way.
And I think you're right. I know as a pilot, nobody likes turbulence. And, I've flown in horrible turbulence as a pilot, but we get used to it. But for
Yeah.
passengers, like you said, they feel out of control and they don't know what's coming
Mm,
next. And they think they're in danger. And really, unless you're really close to the ground and hit wind shear, you're not going to be in danger as long as you're strapped in. So tell us
correct.
about your
Yeah,
program of the
sure.
different levels and I know you have free programs and you have paid programs. For someone who knows nothing about what you have to offer, can you start with maybe just a typical person who wants to take a flight but they're a little apprehensive? What can they learn from the program?
Mm. So we do lots of free help. So this is different, but it's based on, like nearly approaching, what am I now, 30 years of helping nervous flyers. We thought there needs to be a community to help people. So one of the first things that we set up just before the pandemic, which was fortuitous because there was obviously airlines were really badly affected during that time. But we set up a Facebook group and we also set up a podcast. So the podcast has been there's been a new episode every week for nearly 5 years. And for anybody who's perhaps trying out, thinking, I'm not sure if I want to, go near, I want to do something about this, you can listen safely and no one needs to know you. And many people listen to our podcasts and you get them all over the world. And we do. We can see we've got listeners in 140 countries that people can listen to it when they're driving to work or if they're on their train journeys, and they can just then slowly, slowly build up a different picture about what is flying and why is it safe. And same with the Facebook group. So we just turned 11,000 members now, and this is a global community, mostly English speaking, but not all, not exclusively. So we've got people all around the world and they will post their questions that I've got this flight coming up. Can somebody please track me? I want to know I'm be safe. And lots of those sort of questions that can be answered. And this is all helps people can just dial into whenever they want to.
Can you
If
give
somebody's
us
looking for that, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Paul. Can you give us a few tips for what people can start with? Somebody wants to go on a flight, they're nervous. We had a bad year last year in 2025, all over the world, actually, not just in the US, with some pretty scary crashes. And even though they're rare, and I'm part
Mm,
of the media, I'm not here to scare anybody when we report on this, but it scares people. Have you
yeah.
had people ask you about that? Have they asked you, is it safe to fly?
Yeah. And I think you've said it yourself, Make. It is extremely rare. And so even though people will be horrified, and quite rightly, these things make the news and they're all in the public domain, they're there to be investigated. And one of the messages we say is that, yes, it's happened. And the thing about commercial aviation is that every single incident that's happened, we learn from it, as you know. And this is what helps to get us safer and safer all the time. And they say, if I said to you, like, it's one in a trillion that something might happen, there has to be a one to be the trillion. So So it's very, very rare. Of course, it's going to make the news. We don't hide. We don't try and to sort of smooth over it. Say, yeah, this has happened. It'll be investigated fully. So people are desperate to know exactly what happened. And one of the things I always say, and a lot of the pilots that work with me, we just are very, very clear and say, look, let's just wait for the investigation to happen, wait for the report to come out, and then we will know, and then we can add it to the repertoire of stuff that we know about commercial aviation, because it gets safer and safer because all of these things have been investigated. So, what can people do to sort of think about it? It's just it's go towards good information. Don't be looking at things that's on the news about an incident or an accident that's happened, because anything that's reported initially is not going to help you. It certainly won't help the people that's been involved in it. So actually wait for the report to come out and then start to work on the fear. And one of the things that we found is the best way to overcome a fear of flying is to keep chipping away at it day by day, do consistent tiny bits of effort, tiny steps towards overcoming it. So
Interesting, interesting.
yeah.
I wonder if like meditation or visualization is part of that. I don't know, but we're going to ask you that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back when Inside the Cockpit returns right after this. Stay with. Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Inside the Cockpit. If you are a white-knuckled flyer, if you are a mile-high nail biter, you might be a fearful flyer, and this episode is for you. Paul Tazar joined us from the UK. He's a specialist in helping people overcome their fear of flying. Over 30,000 people he's helped. Paul, you were telling us earlier that your background is really as cabin crew.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people think flight attendants are there to give us a Coca-Cola or
Yeah.
a snack. And there's
Yeah.
so much more than that. And I think if people knew how the training is and what you were prepared to do, maybe they would be a little less fearful. Can you tell us about what a flight attendant goes through to become qualified?
Of course, yeah. So, but just a small correction: it's over 30,000 people have been helped by
Oh,
our program
30,000.
so
What did
far.
I say?
3,000. That's
Oh
right.
my gosh. No, folks, 30,000. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, a lot of people. So,
Thank you.
the cabin crew they go through a lot of training. Every cabin crew person in every airline globally goes through a similar set of things. So, for example, you'll go through your safety training, which is, of course, the primary role. But you also go through something called aviation medicine, which is much more than just first aid. It's pretty comprehensive and it's just as challenging. You have a daily high rate, it's normally about 88, 90% pass rate for every day, for every test that you do. And then, depending on the aircraft type, you may do some extra bits of training around this aircraft, that aircraft, because cabin crew, can, unlike pilots, can be trained across Boeings and Airbuses, and so they can fly on a multitude of aircraft. Now, on top of that, you get your customer care training as well, which some airlines, like your No Frills airline, they save a bit of time on that. Other airlines will invest a bit more time in the customer care. But the reality is, yes, you are there to serve cokes and snacks and all the rest of it. But whilst you're doing that, you're always looking around, you're always thinking safety, and you've got tons more training than you ever need. So the reality is, no matter what happens, if you're up there, you're the first port of call. So you have to be pretty resourceful, versatile, and resilient to be able to deal with all sorts of things, different time zones, different languages. And so the cabin crew person that you see in front of you might be smiling at you, serving you a Coke, but they've got a lot more that they can do for you should they need it. And thankfully, most of the time, we don't have to do the stuff that we're trained to do.
Yes. Now, you had said earlier that maybe you will have a passenger. There's always at least one passenger on every flight who is afraid of
Mm.
flying. Um, what do you do if someone has a panic attack?
So, first of all, I'd say if anyone that's traveling, let the airline know, because most airlines are very receptive to this. So, if you let the reservations know or your booking department say, look, I'm a nervous flyer, then the cabin crew are aware of you. When you get on board, tell the crew. So I'm a little bit nervous. Sometimes you'll get a chance to talk to the flight deck before they close the doors or when they land. That can be super helpful because you see how calm the pilots are. And that can be very reassuring because they also get to see a person behind the disembodied voice that they get through the PA. then that can help. The other thing I say is that when you are on board, is to think, well, what is it are my triggers? So I'll talk about what cabin crew will do for panic attacks, but there's a lot that you can do to help yourself beforehand. So, for example, if you don't like turbulence, the easiest tip that you can do, or one of the tips, is to have a bottle of water or a glass of water on your table in front of you. And when you go through any form of turbulence, what your stomach and your semicircular canals perceive as a dramatic movement, or even might feel like you're dropping, when you look at the water, it's hardly moving. And this is a really good logical correction to what might be going on in your mind. So it's just, it helps you sort of think, well, I feel like we're dropping, but the water's hardly moving. So little things like that can help. The other thing I'd suggest is to practice breathing properly well before you take your flights. So don't leave it to the flight itself to be able to actually like, oh, I need to sort my breathing out. So one of our Love Fly episodes, episode 44, is a relaxation session. It's 12 minutes long, it's free, and it teaches you how to breathe. And I call it paced breathing, which in effect is 4 seconds in through your nose, hold for two, out for six through your mouth, hold for two, and repeat. And this funny, tiny little sequence is super, super helpful, because once you get your breathing under sort of some sort of regular pattern, everything else falls into place. Because as you know, the thoughts, the body, emotions, all the rest are all linked. So doing something really practical like that can be super, super helpful for you. So those are a couple of tips. All cabin crew are trained to help you if you hyperventilate, and they know what to do. But mostly what you need is someone with a calm voice, just talk as you say, it's okay, we've got you. What is it you're worried about? Let me tell you why that's okay. And just to be really calm and not worry about it, because anxiety passes, panic attacks pass, they don't last forever. We get, our emotions go in waves. And if you realize that as cabin crew, you can just help somebody just sort of go, look, this is normal, this is okay, you're okay. And we are medically trained, no matter what happens to you, we can deal with it.
Is there a common denominator? I know we talked about this earlier. Would claustrophobia be one of them? Is that an issue with passengers who are afraid to fly? Because we're in this metal tube flying through the air at 500 miles per hour at flight level
Mm.
340 at 34,000 feet. How do you deal with someone who's claustrophobic, or is that not an issue at all?
No, it is an issue, yes, and I should have mentioned that in the sort of the top three. So turbulence, not being in control, and claustrophobia. But when you look at something as complex as fear of flying, it's actually a group of fears that have the heading of fear of flying. And there's many elements to it. And the thing is that it's unique and bespoke to each person. So no one person has the same reason for getting the fear of flying, and it doesn't show itself in the same way. So, for example, someone who's claustrophobic will say, do you know what? I'm fine as long as I get on the aircraft first, or I'm fine if I sit in an aisle seat. So you can see that even though it's claustrophobia, it's too easy to make a blanket statement about it. It's very, very unique to the individual's physiology, psychology, how they experience claustrophobia. And they may not get it in lifts, and some do get it in lifts. Some get it in trains, some don't get it in trains. So you can see it's actually, that's why it's really interesting with our current approach, is that we take a much more bespoke and say, what does the individual need? Versus when I ran courses with 200 people in the room, you couldn't really get a sense of that. Whereas now we have smaller courses, we have the podcast, we do one-to-ones with people. You get much more of a sense of, that's what your process is, which is different to everybody else. And
Interesting.
you've been very lucky to be supported by Sir Richard throughout. So we bought out, we've had 2 books released, and he's done a foreword for both of those. So he's still very much in the picture, which I think hopefully gives people reassurance that we're not just some sort of money making outfit, because that is far from the truth. We do it, and for me personally, after 30 years, and the teams that I work, we all do it because we want to help people.
Well, I can hear the compassion in your voice. I'm sure that you've helped a lot of people, and we're going to take another break. When we come back, is there somebody in particular that, obviously remaining anonymous, that maybe you can share their story with us,
Mm,
how they started and how it ended? So
sure.
we're going to take another break, and Inside the Cockpit will return, helping fearful flyers right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Inside the Cockpit. We're talking to Paul Tizard in the UK. He is an expert on helping fearful flyers. He has helped over 30,000 people. Paul, do you have a good ending, a happy ending story you can tell us about perhaps a customer who was really afraid to fly and after taking your courses or reading your books, ended off in a good way, was able to fly without oh, dying of fear?
Yeah. Yeah, well, loads actually. I mean, I've been very lucky to have met some amazing people. One of the things I'll say about this is, before I give you an individual example, is that what I'm about to say is testament to the human spirit. People, when they decide that they're going to do something about their fear of flying, if they get the right resources and the right help at the right time, they can do anything. And I've seen it so many times. As a professional coach, I believe in the fact that anything's possible if you just keep moving towards these things. And so I'm thinking of a particular example. So an individual who has avoided flying for 30 years, but not only that, all forms of public transport, and sometimes they've even been trapped in their house because they can't go out. So the fear is immense. And one of the things that they start to do, we have this thing called a Love Fly Lounge, which is a virtual group that meets every Saturday, and it has global membership from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And we meet, and one of these individuals has just been amazing. They've just through tiny chipping away, exposing themselves to a bit of the fear, talking about it, has managed to overcome the fears of public transport. We used to have to get taxis everywhere, couldn't go under bridges, couldn't go on motorways, can now travel anywhere, has taken over 18 flights in the last year. It's just amazing. And I'd love to say that was down to us, but it's actually a partnership approach. They've decided they want to do this because they want to make. So the thing about travel is about having choices. So we can live our lives without flying on aircraft. We can get around the world in lots of other ways, but it's more inconvenient, more costly. And also, what we're doing is actually robbing ourselves of choices how we want to live our life. And the thing I always say to people is, yeah, it's not the end of the world if you avoid aircraft, but what we are missing out on is fantastic opportunities to be able to see the world from a different perspective and visit people, places, and have memories and experiences that you just can't get any other way. And so part of the driver behind the reason why it keeps us going and just keep going and going and going and helping everybody and believing that they can do it is that you're robbing yourself of choices. You only get one shot at this, so let's make sure that you can live the life how you want to live it. And that's how our resources and our help partners with individuals who want to take that extra step and willing to put a bit of effort in consistently. And when people do that, it's amazing what they achieve.
I love that, Paul.
How's that?
Oh, I
That's a
love
nice
that.
story.
That inspires me, and some of my happiest moments of my life are
Mm,
in the air. And you're so right. And it's about freedom, really, isn't it?
yes,
Not to give in to
exactly.
the fear, but I'm going to face
Mm,
it, because the rewards are just limitless.
yeah.
That was so
Mm,
beautifully said. Paul, how can
thank you.
people get in touch with you and learn about your programs?
Thanks, Mike. So the easiest way is just through our website. We are on lots of social media, but if you go, website is lovefly.aero, AERO. But if you go on to Instagram, Facebook, wherever you search, if you put Love Fly in, you'll find us. Our podcast as well, you can get that on every channel that you can download podcasts on. That's been going for 5 years, a new episode every week. So there's lots of ways to find us. But I promise you, put Love Fly into something and we pop up somewhere.
I love that, Paul. And kind of like you said, this can help you in really all aspects of your life, taking
Mm,
charge of your fear in all aspects of your life. And I'm very impressed with your relationship with Virgin Atlantic and Sir Richard Branson. To me, he just represents dreams and dreams coming true.
yeah, we're
So
very lucky.
we love that. Yes, we love that affiliation. So anything you want to say just to close us out? You've already inspired me and hopefully a lot of other people out there. Just one closing word.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, all is not lost. And if you are determined and you're willing to put a little bit of effort in and don't expect instant results, don't expect to be perfect, don't beat yourself up if it's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. you can absolutely overcome your fear of flying. Because I've just seen so many thousands of people who've even surprised themselves by what is possible just by consistent effort moving towards a positive goal. You can do it.
We can do it, Paul. We can do it. Paul Tizard coming to us from the UK. I love it, Paul. Hopefully,
Thank
you'll
you.
continue to help people. What incredible work you've done. Over 30,000 people you've helped. Good for you. Bless you. But
Thank
so
you.
thank you, Paul. We look forward to hearing more of your
Pleasure.
success stories.
Thank you.
And we thank all of you out there for joining us on this edition of Inside the Cockpit. I'm your host, May K. Bueller with Queen City News Plus. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.